IIT definitely gives you the benefit of the doubt and confidence, right? Having done well at IIT, gives you that bit of sense of accomplishment and a solid foundation to stand on. My original aspiration was to go into civil services.
Right.
So I chose electrical engineering in Delhi being kind of the hub with that in mind.
Right.
So in my class of 50 students from Jamshedpur, probably I'd say 8 or 9 got into IIT. I was the outlier. Everyone went to IIT Kharagpur, which was closer.
Right.
And I came to Delhi. I've done 3 companies, and I'd say first one was a failure commercially, second one was a moderate success, and the third one was a ball out of the park.
Yes.
And each one taught me a bunch of things.
Yes.
Right? I watched the Netflix show Kota Factory, and I was like, wow, it's a full industrial production line now. I mean, I grew up in a small town called Jamshedpur. It's an industrial town. My dad worked for Tata Motors, and I had the privilege of going to a very good school. And it was a small town of engineers, so all parents just cared about their kids' education.
Yes.
Right? So as what you would say, a classic nerd in school, right? I did well in school, and was interested in physics, chemistry, math, and IIT, but there wasn't any sort of organized coaching or anything like that. I did correspondence courses, which for students today might be shocking. You get instruction material in the mail, and you read the lectures and you solve problems and you send it back by mail, and a month later you get feedback on what you did. So I did Brilliant and Agarwal classes through online correspondence, and that was it. And I did well relatively. I'd say my JEE rank was 55, and that landed me in IIT Delhi. 2006, there were a lot of attacks that were starting on Wi-Fi networks, and one in particular, there were some hackers who breached TJ Maxx, a store in the US, and siphoned 40 million credit cards by sitting in the parking lot, right? Essentially sniffing everything that was happening. And so there's a lot of, talk about product market fit. The market was asking for, hey, wireless, it's liberating, but how do I secure it?
Yes.
And so a company called Air Defense was the company that we worked on together, and that was a huge commercial success. And all retail establishments, or a bulk of them, lots of businesses started saying, hey, we love Wi-Fi, but we need some security on that Wi-Fi. So there I learned the importance of good product management, good product market fit, and the importance of having a sales team that can go to market and sell those deals. You can control for everything except timing, right? If you're too early, you waste all the resources.
Absolutely.
If you're too late, then you're playing catch up. So it was the right product, right time, and it was successful.
Yes.
See, IIT has this wonderful way of connecting a bunch of people in space-time, right? And then you just they stick with you forever. So in your batch, you see all kinds of students. You see students who were top of the class but completely flame out in the first semester. You see the silent, persistent types, right? I think I'd say I was more of the latter, right? If you are extroverted, if you're good with people, as they say, EQ and IQ, right? It goes a long way, right? Whether it's talking to investors or customers, it definitely matters. I mean, you could be the most technically sharp person, but if you cannot interact with people, it's very hard to have a successful business, right?
Hi folks, welcome to this episode of Dil Se IIT Delhi podcast. And today we have the privilege of hosting a distinguished alumni of IIT Delhi, Dr. Amit Sinha, who is an electrical engineering graduate from the batch of 98, who is, coincidentally also has had his 25th reunion today.
Yes.
Welcome to IIT Delhi. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
How does it feel at the outset?
Well, it feels like we've started right where we left off. I had a chance to meet 163 of my batchmates, so quite a spectacular turnout.
Yes.
I think we've broken a few records. And honestly, I was at Nilgiri Hostel where I was for 4 years, and yes, the amenities have been upgraded, but I really felt like we just left, we started right where we left off, and 25 years was just a blip in time through a wormhole.
And what do you feel of the campus? How has it changed? You must have had a few glimpses.
Yeah.
Any views on that?
Well, my first impression was that, wow, the trees have really grown, right? So 25 years ago, the trees and the foliage was not as dense as it is now. E-department building was not visible. The coffee shop was hidden. The trees around the fields have grown. So the campus looked greener, much more mature. See a bunch of new buildings too, but it still has the same vibe.
Yeah. And how did it feel to be honored in 2022 with the Distinguished Alumni Award as well? What do you think is the significance of the award for you and for the institution itself?
I feel very grateful to IIT Delhi. It's shaped my life in fundamental ways. It's given me lifelong friends, and I feel a lot of joy in giving, and I feel very grateful. So, I know it's not a tit for tat, but it's a good acknowledgement, and I plan to continue to do more.
Sure. You speak about how you have begun from where you left off. But if we talk about where it all began, how did you end up in IIT, and how was that experience like?
I watched the Netflix show Kota Factory, and I was like, wow, it's a full industrial production line now. I mean, I grew up in a small town called Jamshedpur. It's an industrial town. My dad worked for Tata Motors, and I had the privilege of going to a very good school, and it was a small town of engineers, so all parents just cared about their kids' education.
Yes.
Right? So I was what you would say, a classic nerd in school, right? I did well in school, and I was interested in physics, chemistry, math, and IIT, but there wasn't any sort of organized coaching or anything like that. I did correspondence courses, which for students today might be shocking. You get instruction material in the mail, and you read the lectures, and you solve problems, and you send it back by mail, and a month later you get feedback on what you did. So I did Brilliant and Agarwal classes through online correspondence, and that was it. And I did well relatively. I'd say my JE rank was 55, and that landed me in IIT Delhi. My original aspiration was to go into civil services.
Right.
So I chose electrical engineering, and Delhi being kind of the hub with that in mind.
Right.
So in my class of 50 students from Jamshedpur, probably I'd say 8 or 9 got into IIT. I was the outlier. Everyone went to IIT Kharagpur, which was closer.
Right.
And I came to Delhi.
Right. So how did the dream change then during the course of 4 years?
I mean, it's a good question. I'd say one turning point for me was, IIT Delhi had an exchange program with UMass Amherst. And in my third year, I got the opportunity to go to UMass Amherst for 1 semester.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the education system there. I took a whole bunch of classes. Obviously, the campus life was stimulating. That was one. And then, when I was graduating, there was a lot of, I'd say, excitement around technology. The internet bubble was growing at that time.
Yep.
A lot of tech startups were being funded. And when you contrasted that with some of the challenges in the public sector, and and you thought about the impact that you could make at that time, it felt to me that a better choice was, pursuing a master's and PhD.
Yeah.
So it was a combination in my third year and fourth year of the UMass experience and the macro environment at that time that made me make my choice.
Sure. And what about the friends that you made during that time?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, those friends are all here, right? So, IIT friends are friends for life. In fact, after our reunion, a bunch of us are doing a road trip to Ranthambore, right?
Amazing, yeah.
So it's see, IIT has this wonderful way of connecting a bunch of people in space-time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you just kind of, they stick with you forever. So, those friends are just, just there through life. And, you can always start off with them where you left off.
Yes.
Without any qualms or without any pretenses.
So coming from a school in Jamshedpur where you were doing really well, and to find yourself amongst peers who are now doing amazingly well in their respective schools and coming to IIT. So how did the playing field get leveled, so to speak, and how do you suppose that a person needs to fit a certain template to survive in IIT?
I mean, look, I'm a sample of one. So, you in your batch, you see all kinds of students. You see students who were top of the class but completely flame out in the first semester. You see kind of the silent, persistent types, right? I think I'd say I was more of the latter, right? It helped that for me going home was a 24-hour train journey, so I was on campus quite a bit. I started embracing the hostel food that everyone hated. And all my friends say that I was the only one who ate at the mess.
Yeah.
But it was out of necessity, not a choice, and then you start appreciating it. So long story short, I was on campus all the time, and maybe I'd say I was quite disciplined. So, I continued to do well through my undergrad days at IIT, and I ended up being the PGM. So for me, I didn't feel like that. Oh my God! Suddenly there's too much intense competition. I just kind of did what I would do, which is study and do well in tests.
Yeah. Okay. But then you go about and pursue your MS and PhD from MIT.
Right.
And then you also venture into opening 2 or 3 or 4 startups, or sort of working with them.
Yeah.
So does the persistence and discipline and being silent throughout that time count as better versus something of an effervescent behavior? Suppose someone who is ridiculously after a goal or wants to open a startup, right? What is the better way to go about as per you?
I mean, look, everyone has a certain character, right? I think to be successful in a startup, I mean, you have to have grit and drive. There's no question about it. If you are extroverted, if you're good with people, as they say, EQ and IQ, right? It goes a long way, right? Whether it's talking to investors or customers, it definitely matters. I mean, you could be the most technically sharp person, but if you cannot interact with people, it's very hard to have a successful business, right? So I think there isn't one character type that's successful, right?
Yeah.
I did end up doing a bunch of companies, and I think I'd say probably I have a good blend of both. I can be good with people, and I can talk to engineers, and I can also talk to CEOs. So having that dynamic range of the ability to talk to different kinds of people help. But also being strong technically gives you confidence that there's no BS, and it's always easier, I say, for an engineer to become a business person or a salesperson than the other way around, right? Because there's always that fear of technology or fear of not knowing what's inside the black box if you're just a purely salesperson.
Makes sense. So what was the part that you took from IIT which sort of shaped this perspective of yours? And what is it that you learned on the way?
I mean, look, IIT definitely gives you the benefit of the doubt and confidence, right? Having done well at IIT, gives you that bit of sense of accomplishment and a solid foundation to stand on. I got into MIT largely because I went to IIT and I did well. So it's easy for MIT to select a student from IIT who's done well versus from other places. So they're all kind of betting on people who have done something, past performance being an indicator of future performance. And colleges have a tough time choosing, which student to pick. So that helped me get into MIT, and then sort of life, just one thing leads to another thing, and I graduated from MIT in September of 2001. It was absolutely the worst time. 9/11 had just happened, and the internet bubble had just burst, and there weren't many companies hiring. And so that's how I ended up going to the world of startups, because a bunch of us said, hey, there aren't too many jobs, so why don't we do our own thing? And that was my first company, Engine. I was focused on Wi-Fi semiconductors. This is when Wi-Fi had just come around, which might again be shocking for many students. Like, what? Wi-Fi wasn't there? It wasn't. I think it's IIT is definitely a door opener, and it gives you the benefit of the doubt. And sort of for me, one thing led to another thing.
So what were the lessons that you learned from the initial years from the startup world?
A lot. I've done 3 companies, and I'd say first one was a failure commercially, second one was a moderate success, and third one was a ball out of the park.
Yes.
And each one taught me a bunch of things.
Yes.
Right. I'd say my first company, Engine, we had a dozen people from MIT and Harvard, right, and smart PhDs and master's students, and so it basically became an extended research lab. And I think I learned about the importance of product market fit, right? Sure. I think we were trying to come up with a Wi-Fi access point that could transmit and receive on multiple channels at the same time, and really have high bandwidth and enterprise class features and sell it to big businesses.
Sure.
But if I have to simplify it, I think we were trying to sell rockets when people really just wanted bicycles, right? Yeah. So that's the importance of knowing the market and coming up with a product that fits the market. Sure. We didn't quite have product management or any of those types of things. We were like, hey, a bunch of smart engineers. A bunch of VCs said, hey, these people are smart, they will figure out something, so let's give them money. So we did cool things, but it wasn't a commercial success.
Sure.
But then kind of that opened up the door to my second company called Air Defense. I met Jay Chaudhary, who is a super successful businessman, and he's my mentor as well. So in 2006, there were a lot of attacks that were starting on Wi-Fi networks, and one in particular, there were some hackers who breached TJ Maxx, a store in the US, and siphoned 40 million credit cards by sitting in the parking lot, right? Essentially sniffing everything that was happening. And so there's a lot of talk about product market fit. The market was asking for, hey, wireless, it's liberating, but how do I secure it?
Yes.
And so a company called Air Defense was the company that we worked on together, and that was a huge commercial success. And all retail establishments, or a bulk of them, lots of businesses started saying, hey, we love Wi-Fi, but we need some security on that Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So there I learned the importance of good product management, good product market fit, and the importance of having a sales team that can go to market and sell those deals. Also learned the importance of timing, right? I mean, in businesses, you can control for everything except timing, right? If you're too early, you waste all the resources.
Absolutely.
If you're too late, then you're playing catch up. So it was the right product, right time, and it was successful.
Yes.
And then air defense was acquired by Motorola, and after that I joined Zscaler, which was a huge commercial success.
Sure.
I was there for 12 years, still on the board, and that was launched in around 2008. Again, in hindsight, everything looks bloody obvious, right? But in 2008, I'd say the first iPhone had come out, and there was one cloud app called Salesforce. And the big bet at that time was, if employees are everywhere and your data is sitting in the cloud, where should security be? And our answer was security should be a service in the cloud. So that was kind of Zscaler. And it was a huge commercial success. What did I learn there? Obviously, having a bold, clear vision helps.
Right.
But then relentless execution on that, right? So the bold vision was, we'll live in a world without any perimeter. So how should you deliver security as a service through the cloud? And 2008, 2009 financial crisis had happened. Obviously, you go and talk to a bank and they'd say, hey, we never do cloud, and security in the cloud, forget it, right? But knowing where the puck is going and then relentlessly executing towards it was probably the formula at Zscaler. And it's now a $30 billion company. At the height of the pandemic, it was worth $50 billion, and it'll continue to grow. So so first company, product market fit. Second one, kind of timing and good go-to-market. Third one, I'd say having a bold vision and relentless execution.
Now, how are times with DigiCert coming along now?
So now, I'm the CEO of DigiCert. We are a private company. If you look us up, we're in the $500 to $1 billion revenue range. So it's a sizable business. Our mission is digital trust for the real world. Everything around you, from the documents that you sign to software updates to the encryption that you see, the little lock icon when you connect to your bank, all of those things are based on cryptography, right? And DigiCert, we're proud to serve more than 80% of Fortune 500 businesses. And the use cases are just expanding, right? Like from IoT to EV charging to content trust. How do you know what's real and what's fake anymore? And all of these, the math behind it is all similar, right? They're based on sort of one-way functions and cryptography. And so DigiCert, provides solutions for digital trust in all these domains.
So from Zscaler becoming a NASDAQ 100 company to now serving 80% of the Fortune 500, what is the next sort of benchmark you'll be looking at?
Look, just because one company is successful doesn't mean the next company is also. There's so many factors that determine a company's success. I think ultimately we all want to make impact, right? And impact is measured in terms of where something is and where you take it, right? Say we live in a very digital world today, right? And look around you. How do you trust that the flight systems on your airplane haven't been tampered with? How do you know that the document you signed is going to be valid in a court of law, right? How do you know that your Aadhaar information will not get leaked yet again, right? So, how do you know what's real and what's fake? How do I trust that an IoT device that I use at home isn't been tampered with, right? So all of these are very pressing digital trust challenges as we live in a world that's more and more digital. And so, the next big thing for me is how do we have fundamental digital trust in all of these things that touch our lives, and have the assurance that they are authentic, they haven't been tampered with, my data is secure.
Yes.
So that's sort of the digital trust for the real world theme.
Yeah.
And obviously we're focused on businesses, but then it expands into consumers as well.
Yeah. So I love the answer because I think it leads to your more qualitative philosophy in life rather than like quantitative, where I asked you what is the next benchmark. But I think you've been already coming from that place. Now my question is, as a layperson who is now entering the digital world in whatever sense, and also being influenced by it as well, what do you think is the landscape going to look like in next 10 years and next 20 years? What should all of us be prepared for?
It's a wide question, but are you talking more from a cybersecurity perspective or just like, I mean, in 20 years, man, so many things will change. We don't even know what's going to happen in 5 years. But
for sure. Because given your experience of like last decade and a half, right? Given you have seen the transitioning happening. So what was it that made you be ready for what was to come?
It's a great question. Look, I have kids who are 19 and 17 now, right? I'll start with a wider qualitative answer, and then maybe we can focus on some areas of technology.
Sure.
This is a very wide topic, and we can go on and on it. What I tell my kids is, if you look at my parents, my dad, worked in one company for 25 years, right? Most, people in that generation had, one job, one company, over the course of their lifetime. If you look at our generation, you have a career, and then maybe you go through 5, 6, depending on average, a number of companies through your tenure. I tell my kids that the rate at which change is happening, you might have to reinvent your whole life every decade, right? So, I mean, look, maybe 5 years ago, being a radiologist was a very lucrative profession. If you look at what's going to happen in the next couple of years, machines will be able to read medical imaging way better. They won't get tired, right?
True.
So then, lots of these professions get disrupted. So as you look at the next 10, 20 years, I think what is more important is agility, adaptability, going back to Darwin's philosophy of it's not the strongest that survive, it's not the most intelligent that survive, it's the ones that are most adaptable to change, right?
Sure.
So we'll see a lot of change, and what I would encourage people to do is be agile, be adaptable, right? Be a student for life, because things will change very rapidly. Now, in terms of kind of specific technology, I mean, we're all seeing a huge AI revolution. You see how fast things are happening. In cryptography, I see a huge disruption coming from quantum computing, right? Everything that we trust online today is based on math that is hard to solve on traditional computers, right? Like factorizing big numbers into 2 prime factors, and if I give you 4,000 digit number and say factorize it, it'll take you several hundred years in current computers, but quantum computers may be able to do it in a few minutes. So there's a lot of push now happening in the cryptography world on having post-quantum cryptography or quantum safe algorithms, right? And standards are being worked on right now. So the quantum computing will be a huge disruption, right? Many algorithms that are not feasible in today's computers will become feasible. So that'll have implications from AI to climate prediction to cryptography, right? I think as an information society, probably knowing what's real and what's fake is going to be a huge problem for us, right? So you'd see standards emerge around that, right? Like, how do I know that this video is authentic, right? How do I know that this crime scene photo hasn't been tampered with, right?
Sure.
How do I know that this document has been doctored and re-signed, right? So, knowing what's real, fake, AI getting into all areas, quantum computers being able to solve problems that traditional computers cannot, and their implications to security and privacy that's based on pre-quantum algorithms. I think these would be kind of big tectonic shifts that you'd see.
So, two-part question. So, what is one thing that you should what should someone on the campus right now studying should reconsider or should reorient towards? What is that one advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I think we had a spirited debate in the morning on the curriculum at IIT, right? And how, that needs to evolve more rapidly, right? Back to agility and adaptability and being responsive to the rate of change that we're seeing around. I think I'd encourage students to take a little more of an interdisciplinary approach, right? And I'm seeing some of that in the curriculum itself. But I think more and more it's applying knowledge from one field, with ideas and interesting things from another field. That leads to transformative outcomes, right? So don't be kind of single-threaded and, hey, I'm CS, so I'll only do this, right? I am electrical engineering, or I am mechanical engineering, I'll only do this. So, a lot of US universities are encouraging a lot of interdisciplinary programs where, faculty from biology and medicine, and computer science, and maybe, material science, they come together, and the solutions that come out of that is just, transformative, right?
Sure.
So a little more of an interdisciplinary approach, right? Have a wider lens view on things, right? Be curious. One of my most famous and inspiring quotes I heard was from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Let me make sure I don't misquote him, but essentially what he says is that as the area of our knowledge increases, so does the perimeter of our ignorance, right? So the more you know, the more you realize, oh my God, there's so much you don't. So, having that learn it all mindset as opposed to know it all, having a little bit of an interdisciplinary lens while you're at IIT, that will certainly help.
So what would have in hindsight, obviously, did Amit Sinha of 25 years ago would have done better? Now that you think about it.
I mean, unfortunately, there's no A/B test in life, right? So one of my philosophies has been, life always gives you at different corners, option A, option B, right? And my dad actually told me this. He said, hey, look, the difference between an entrepreneur and an engineer is that an engineer will always look at option A, option B, make a spreadsheet of pros, cons, and what's this, was this better, was that better, and you will be forced to make a choice, and then you make a choice, and you'll always be thinking, oh, had I gone down that path, which does not exist in this universe, right? It's maybe in a parallel universe it does. So I try not to think of that. Like his advice was, hey, life gives you option A, option B. Evaluate, make a decision, choose an option, and then go down the path as if the other one never existed.
Amazing.
And then you would be happier. You would be, I'd say, just more productive, and not second guessing yourself in hindsight. But one thing I'd recommend is, look, I did a pretty fast PhD, and I just kind of, one thing led to another thing. I never really paused to evaluate, right? And now I think students, they have more choices.
Sure.
We are hopefully living longer lifespans, right? So take a moment, pause, enjoy. I'd say, I just picked a PhD problem and ran into it. Maybe being out there in the industry, looking at 5-6 different problems and picking another one might have been more interesting, right?
Sure.
But then, I have no regrets. I feel actually quite happy.
Amazing. So coming down to the contributions that you are now making in lives of innumerable people, be it the setting up of Amit and Dipali Sinha Foundation, and you endowing a couple of chairs, scholarships in different institutions, for example. In a sense, you're enabling students to actually give heed to advice that you're giving.
Right.
What sort of vision do you have for that part of your life?
Yeah, look, what I at least have seen from my perspective is your early life and how you've led your life doesn't change that much, right? So if you become financially independent and successful, you really have two choices, right? One is ceaseless, unending consumption, and the other is thoughtful giving, right? And as I said, my life is kind of set and nothing has really changed, right? I still like to look at coupons from Costco and I get a lot of joy if I save $1, right, in buying toothpaste. So and that's how I'm wired, right? So I find a lot of joy in giving, right? And countless people have said that giving is more satisfying than taking, right? And I think if we're all custodians for the future generation, and thousands of people have come before me, thousands of people will go after me, right? So you do your little part, and you hope you inspire a few people along the way, and they pay it forward, and the circle of goodness continues, right?
Sure.
So that's how I look at it. And
So you just met a couple of the newest crop of the Amit Sinha Foundation Fellowship, right? And who are the top rankers of the JEE and have chosen IIT to be their home for the near future. What sort of a difference do you see with regard to how they are responding with the environment around and how you did back then?
I mean, it was an amazing conversation with the group, and the first thing I felt was old, right? Because they said, "Hey, you're as old as my parents," right? And I honestly, my kids are 19 and 17, exactly the age that they were. In my heart, I felt like I was still them, and obviously the students these days are smarter. Smarter because they have more exposure and they have vast access to information. During our time, there were two factors that influenced your success. One was access to information.
True.
And second was your ability to use that information, right?
Yeah.
I think the current generation, the first problem is solved, right? There's anything everywhere is accessible, right?
Yes.
And free in most cases. So if you really had a desire to learn, you could sit anywhere and become an expert, right?
Yes.
So then if that first factor is removed, the question becomes the ability to process information and who's less distracted. And maybe the pessimist would say who's a better search engineer and who's a better prompt engineer can find the right answer very quickly. But I think, I look at my kids, I look at some of these kids, every generation has a different set of problems, and we all sit and pontificate and say, "Mere time mein to aisa hota tha," right? That's just a wrong way of looking at it. Every generation has their challenges. I mean, they have more, I'd say, social media pressures and other factors to deal with that we didn't, right? And that's the side effect of free access to information, right? I struggled with Irodov problems because there was no one to tell me.
Yes.
Now you can search up and you'll get a PDF, of how it was solved, along with 4 videos from 4 different people explaining, how to solve that problem. So every generation has their hills to conquer, and it's difficult to compare one with the other.
So thinking about the environment that each generation grows up in, what sort of a vision do you hold for IIT Delhi as an institution? As what is the direction it should work towards?
I mean, look, again, I'm not the expert, and IIT is a nationally funded institute, right? The most amazing thing that IIT does is select an amazing group of students who have have a certain level of IQ, have drive, have grit. So a combination of skill and will, right? So the JE process is just an amazing way to select that. So then the question is, what do I do with that raw talent, right? So we had a lot of discussions on how the curriculum should evolve and other factors. But for IIT overall, right, I think if you compare it to the US model, right, there's a lot of emphasis in the US model on research, on funding, on endowments, on industry partnerships.
Yes.
And the government regulated model, does have restrictions on, for example, faculty salaries or even some of the endowments that we have done. How can they be invested to generate more gains? I mean, they have restrictions compared to the U.S. model. I'm not suggesting that one is right or wrong, but you can borrow some great ideas to promote deeper industry partnerships. More investments from alumni, right? I think the biggest asset that IIT has is a rich alumni network, right?
Yes.
And the ability to unleash that in a way will help. And it's not just funding, it's accessing industries and verticals that many of the graduates are now leading, right?
Yes.
So being able to tap into that more effectively, as being done by the Alumni Association, would be good. Deeper emphasis on research, because that affects rankings. Everyone is obsessed with rankings, and it becomes a flywheel, because higher the rank, better the funding, better the students, and then it kind of becomes a flywheel, right? So I'd say a faster evolving interdisciplinary curriculum for the undergraduate students, more emphasis on research, tapping into the alumni network, borrowing some good ideas on endowment fund management, right? And then really going deeper into research, right? Because that affects the overall performance on the world stage.
Sure. You speak very humbly, so that you are not the expert, but at the same time, I think the Alumni network is such an entity right now, which can actually work in different directions. And I think you are already spearheading in one of those directions, being the founder of the endowment fund. At the same time, there are other alumni who are helping us, working with us, also have a certain different, might have a different vision as well for what IIT Delhi can do and what it's currently doing as well. What is that one message that you have for your fellow IITians?
I mean, that's again broad question. I'd say one big difference the endowment fund has made, right, is in the past the funding model was very, I'd say, projects specific, right? So now everyone has their own sort of agenda, or they want to do something specific, right? So first you find a cause within IIT, then you fund it, then there's administration overhead of that, right? The endowment model, which has been set up now, which I believe is, the endowment is sitting at some 400 crores or something like that now, right? And the vision to get it to $1 billion, and now you have MITs and Harvards have sitting at 30-40 billion, right? I think it's a good model, right? For alumni, I would say the seed of the endowment is there, right? And now you can pour into that seed, and the administration cost and all of those things get pooled, right? And then it gives flexibility to the institute to really figure out the need of the hour, whether it's building hostels or setting up a quantum research lab or what have you. And it gives a little bit of independence to the institute, and it is borrowing the best practices, right? Where I would encourage the endowment fund to think about is, why just limit ourselves to fixed income rate returns, right? Like, how do I manage it professionally and get more returns so the corpus is protected, and the dividend and interest drive investments from it. So to my batchmates, I'd say, hey, the vehicle is there, right?
Yes.
It's if you're sitting in the US, it's a 501c3 registered non-profit. You just choose it and you can send money, and it goes into a well-managed establishment. To students, again, we talked about curriculum, interdisciplinary things, and all of that. But those would be my initial ideas there.
Yeah, fair enough. So this has been an insightful conversation, and I think we do touch upon a lot of your insights from your career, your time at IIT Delhi. So just a sort of a recall of what it was back then. We have a rapid fire.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. I have to warn you, I am still on California time. It's 3 a.m. I flew in yesterday and I'm massively jet lagged, but I'll give it my best shot.
Yeah, we will try not to bother you too much. So your department or your hostel?
Hostel.
So IIT Delhi or MIT?
Probably IIT Delhi.
Is it right now, or it'll change as soon as you step out of the campus?
No, this is kind of home in many ways.
What was the prouder moment, getting through IIT or MIT?
I mean, see, I'd say getting into MIT felt a little prouder because IIT was a wide spectrum. You were getting in. I was kind of getting in. I knew it, right? So you were more about a rank, right? Yeah. So I'd probably go with MIT.
Yeah, cool.
Sorry, that wasn't rapid fire. It was a little more
it's called cool.
Elaborate.
KLS or mess food?
I like mess food.
That's a surprising answer. First year or fourth year?
Fourth year.
India or the US?
Say my heart is in India, but my mind is in the US.
Sure. Library or the wind tunnel?
I like the library.
Okay. SAC or outdoor sports?
SAC.
Rendezvous or convocation?
Rendezvous.
Water fight at the hostel or birthday celebrations at the hostel?
Water fight. Hands down.
Student life or current life?
I mean, it's student life, man. Who didn't enjoy their student life?
Thank you for the time, Mr. Amit Sinha. Dr.
Awesome.
Amit Sinha. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just Amit, and it was a sheer pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it's been a lovely conversation. We would hope to have you on the campus again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, a little less jet lagged. I hope we did not bother you too much.
No,
and the coffee was sufficient.
Coffee was good. It woke me up, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for the time.